Mm-hmm. All right, here we
All the other
go.
questions, I don't
The
know what
interview
it is.
of Karen and Tony Barone. Okay, almost got you. All right. So, do I have your permission to take this interview?
Yes,
You
you
did.
absolutely
Okay,
do.
good. And today we're in the Barone home, and we're going to get to know the Barones. Okay, so Tony, what's your full name?
I was born
Mhm.
Anthony Paul Barone,
Okay,
and my name, but I'm known as Tony Barone.
okay,
In fact, when friends would call and ask for Tony, my dad would say, "There's no Tony living here."
He didn't like that, or he didn't want to move.
No,
He didn't want you to move on.
no. I was named after a saint,
Sure.
so.
We call
Karen?
on that saint often.
What was your maiden name, if you want to?
Karen Louise Geis, Giese.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you both grew up in Chicago.
We did. What a
Did
city.
you?
What a perfectly marvelous city. We both love it. I feel as though everybody from Chicago, their word is their bond.
Yeah.
You can just shake hands with someone and you don't need contracts or agreements. They're honest people.
Do you still consider that to be your hometown or your place?
Well, yes,
No, I
yes,
know.
but we haven't been.
It's our hometown.
Right,
you know.
no, you are
Yeah.
where you're born is your hometown.
But I have no desire to go there.
Yeah.
It's changed so much.
Yeah.
So,
And where did your ancestors come from, Tony?
My entire family was Sicilian, both sides, and but my father was from one part of Sicily, and my mother was from another. You want
And-
detail on that?
I want to know how they made their way to Chicago.
Oh well, my father, when he was about 18,
16.
really,
Yeah, really. He was young.
16. That's when he came on his
No,
own.
that's when yes.
He was actually,
11, I think.
actually,
First time.
my grandfather came here.
Okay,
And he
now
had
we're
a-
getting into it now.
He had a barber shop,
Mm-hmm.
and he had 14 kids. And my father was the youngest of all those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he had kind of made it. And he decided to go back to Italy, to this town. He opened
In
up
Sicily or Italy?
Sicily.
Okay.
Well, we say Italy as a whole, but Sicily.
Okay.
He went back to Sicily and opened like a barista. And that's all I really know. My father was taken with him. The older kids didn't go back. They stayed. So my aunts and uncles, most of them were still here when my father went back to Italy with his mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came back on his own when he was 16.
Yeah.
16. And that's it. I could go
So
on.
when you grew up in that house, was that like their first house in the States? Is that where they first moved to, in Chicago?
Yeah, what happened is my father was serving during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I date myself, but I was born and people going into the army to fight the Nazis and the Japs
Mm-hmm.
were being drafted. But if you had a child that was a year old,
Mm-hmm.
you got a deferment for 1 year. So I was with him. I
Right.
knew nothing about this. For the 1 year, he was able to be with my mother and me. And then he got shipped off.
So it was you and your mom at the house then?
Say it again?
Was it you and your mom at the house
Well,
then?
it was me and my mom, but we moved into my grandmother's house.
Okay.
Which
Was
really
that in Albany
changed-
Park?
Albany Park. it changed the whole. It's responsible for more of who I am than anything, being in that particular neighborhood. It was like 90% Jewish, a lot of it Ashkenazi, and some with tattooed numbers on their arms, you know. But I culturally was raised outside the house. Culturally, I was raised Jewish. When high school, everything I did, my friends were all Jewish. And I speak, you know, as much Yiddish as I do Sicilian. And it was great because, like, when I went off to school, high school, when I went off to high school, got into the school, Roosevelt High, and it wasn't a matter of, are you going to go to college? You know, you're a freshman. Are you going to go to college? Because they had courses for college prep, okay? And it wasn't like that because the Jewish kids were all definitely going to college. And so it wasn't, are you going to colleges? Which college are you going to? And so I was going to college. I wasn't going to be a Italian bred truck driver, you know.
By this time, you had your artistic ability was coming out, though.
Way before.
Oh yeah, when was that? So when?
Well, I actually think it was like 4 or 5 years old, and my family was so supportive. People would they wouldn't say Tony's going to be an artist.
Yeah.
They said Tony is an artist.
Yeah.
Like that, and my dad would say, "You're going to be a great artist." He says, "But learn the food business and you'll never go hungry."
Right. Artist was not considered a real job or something.
No, not at that time, but
Yeah.
he knew I would be successful at it, and that was it. They were great that way.
You mentioned something about you would go into the garage and you'd paint walls in the garage. What's that? What happened?
The family was so supportive,
Yeah.
and as when I was born, I was the first child born to the Sicilian family. And my mother was the first of the 2 daughters to have a child, but she had a miscarriage. So when I came, I was like the infant Jesus arriving in the house. Okay, spoiled
imagine.
beyond belief.
Give me an example of a spoiled. Can you think of?
A good spoil would be, yeah. Well,
He's still spoiled, so
my
he's
grandmother
still spoiled.
could.
He
Yeah,
is.
I went from one woman spoiling to another.
Sure.
My grandmother, like at Christmas time, when after the family had grown and I had cousins, and at Christmas time, my grandmother didn't speak English well. She spoke Italian.
What was her name, by the way? What was her first name?
In English, she was Marietta,
Okay.
but she was called Marietta. Okay, which means Little Mary, which is every Sicilian house with more than 3 kids has a Mary
And a Tony.
and an Anthony,
Yeah.
Tony. So it's almost a cliche. But she would, and we lived in a 3-flat. My parents lived on the top floor with us, with me and my sister and my brother ultimately. And my grandmother lived on the 2nd floor with my godmother, my mother's sister, who hadn't gotten married yet. And then there was this basement. A lot of the Italians had giant basements because initially they were for Chicago winters. It needed coal and furnaces.
So is that why they called it a 3-flat? Why wouldn't that have been a 2 with the basement?
It's a 2-flat.
Oh, I thought you said 3.
No, it's a 2-flat. The basement doesn't.
2-flat
I
plus
didn't
basement.
think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they never mentioned the basement.
No.
The basement was.
Right. It
Why?
was
Why?
there.
Why did they not mention the
I
basement?
have no idea. Just, but there was no need. Everybody
was
had
just-
one. you know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. We did.
But it was tricked out to make food. It had a complete
Oh
kitchen.
yeah,
even though there's a washer machine down there. They had a complete kitchen, and we were a big family. And on Sunday, we meet 20, 25 people for dinner every Sunday. So that was the only room that it'd be in. It was super clean. It wasn't like a basement because the walls were all painted. They
Who
just
painted the walls?
my grandfather.
Ah.
They painted it right over the brick. So it was like enamel. So I mean, later,
shiny paint.
yeah, but later,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people paneled the basement. They became
True.
game rooms.
Yes, right.
But this
I
time,
remember
that hadn't happened yet. And,
Now, Karen
Yes.
lived also in Chicago, and you lived in the suburbs.
No, not
Oh,
originally.
okay.
No, good old Chicago, by a place called Olson Rug. And Olson Rug was very famous because it had this waterfall and all this property, and it would be totally tricked out for whatever holiday it was. So hundreds of people would come to this particular place, and it was like right across the street from us and just a little way down.
Olson Rug was known during the Depression for not letting its
Oh, is that
staff
right?
go.
They kept their staff.
Right.
So the staff worked on creating these grounds with stones and
Oh, I
walkways.
That was very special.
Yeah,
It was a
it
very
was
all
interesting
it
neighborhood.
was, you know, a working class adventure.
Mm.
People would come from all over on a Sunday, and the Chicago Tribune would feature a full page color etching of
All the different
fall,
settings, right, especially
Indian,
fall and
and
Christmas,
it tied
right.
everything to Native Americans from Chicago.
Right.
Chicago was a Native American name.
I didn't realize that. Okay. So how was this thing that you met? How could you meet like this?
All right.
What was it? Let's hear about this story.
As it turns out, both of us ended up living in a suburb outside of Chicago, and it was very close to Mount Prospect.
Yeah, married to other people.
Yeah.
Married to other people. And one day, I decided, because all the people that drive me down to my law offices in Chicago were going to be on vacation. So for the first time, I had to drive to the Mount Prospect train station, park the car, and get on a train.
The Northwestern.
The Northwestern, which
Famous
is, yeah,
commuter train.
it is, and where its downtown station was just fabulously
Near the merchandise bar.
decked out as well. And it's the first time I ever took the train, I get on the platform, I look, here's this interesting looking man.
Not gorgeous?
Oh, interesting isn't a bad
That's okay.
word.
Interesting is better now.
And so I get on the train. All of a sudden I see him like pushing a few people and getting on the train behind me. I go and sit down, and because the seats on commuter trains face each other, I'm in the seat on the right. There's a stranger on my left. There's a stranger across from me, and there's Tony practically knocking someone down to get into the seat next to the other
Suck it,
stranger. And next thing I know, he's got a sketch pad out, and I see him drawing. Well, I don't think much of it. I mean, I don't really think that there's any way the
But
drawings
you were
of
aware
me.
that I was drawing.
Oh, I knew you were drawing. I just wasn't sure it was me or not. By the time we got off the train, as we're departing, he hands me the drawing. And the drawing was of myself. Well, I had never had an artist draw me before. I'd photographed
Works every
often.
time.
And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, oh, are you a student? And it was kind of like a slap in the face because he considered himself a great artist.
I'm not
Which
a
he was
great
then.
artist. I considered myself, I knew I could draw probably better than anybody I had
Considered himself a
encountered.
great
yeah.
artist from the moment I met him. So the next thing we knew, and that was his first time because his car was being serviced. So when he took that train, it was totally meant to be. We were meant to
The Sherk.
somehow
For
or
sure.
other, sure, exactly, encounter each other, and whatever took place, we'll never know. But lightning struck, and we've been together just about every
So the
moment
next day,
since.
I couldn't talk to her. That's why I'm doing the drawing.
Mhm.
I couldn't talk to her. I don't think I said anything when I gave you the drawing, anything other than, I'd like you to have this.
Yes, that was,
Okay, and that was
it.
that was it, you know. And then she, you know, cut me off with, "Are you a student?" You know, I wasn't not a student for that long. I'd gone to the Art Institute, which at this point was just a few blocks away from where we were arriving at the terminus for the train, and it hadn't been that many years that I was out, but I was an adult. I was working, you know. I considered myself an adult.
I know.
So now if somebody said, "Are you a student?" you'd say, "Thank you very much," right?
Yeah.
Actually, I think we're always students.
Yeah, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
life is about learning.
That's a compliment. So what's this thing designing restaurants. Okay, so let's get into that now. How did that happen?
Well, I was going to the Art Institute. After I got out of the Art Institute, I really didn't want to live a life of a cliche as an artist. I wanted to live a life as an artist. So I didn't want to wait tables, and I didn't want to drive a taxi. So I have a strong architectural background, and one of my instructors was a protege of Frank Lloyd Wright, and just really took me under her wing quite a bit. So my architectural drawings were very effective. I could draw anything in any fashion, whether they're engineering drawings or whether, you know, I love, right now we're working on a project where I'm on a drawing board with a T-square. Well, it's a floating T-square, it's not the old T-square. T-square, and you know, but then, you know, I could work in front of an easel, freehand drawing. So, where was I?
Well, how did you
How
know
did you
that?
get started in the restaurant world?
Oh, yeah. So I got a job not near the downtown. Is a street called Madison Avenue, and it's also called Skid Row. Okay, can you imagine that we don't have that word anymore? But we have actually whole cities now that are Skid Row, you know. But the I took this job as their draftsman, architectural draftsman, designing restaurants. Well, they were an equipment company. They were interested in the kitchen, and actually that's how a restaurant should be designed, from the kitchen.
Right.
You can't do a restaurant design and then, oh, where am I going to put the stoves, you know? So I did these layouts, I don't know, maybe 300 of them over a period of time, and I became pretty good at it. And that's how we started. And then a couple of artists, friends of ours, and we'd exhibit on the street in Chicago. They had art fairs in Chicago. Really, they were solid. They weren't like, people were professional art fair people traveling from city to city.
That came later.
Huh?
You don't
That
think
came later, yeah. It was just the Gold Coast. It's near Rush Street and Michigan Avenue, and you paid your $20 and you got a space, and then you did what you want with the space. And so, and Chicago had at least a half a dozen of those, maybe more.
So that's how you promoted? Is that how
Yeah,
you-
well, that's how we sold things, and we also were part of a community of artists. Chicago, the artists at these art fairs were all eventually friends because they all came in, they all
Right.
did their thing, and you know, I sell drawings and
And then just based on the fact that he had that background, and we became joined as one,
Yeah.
we were asked by these very successful restaurateurs if we would consider designing restaurants for them.
yeah, well,
Well, give an example. I think you mentioned an example.
Letters, Lettuce,
Yeah.
entertain
but before
you.
lettuce was the tango, and
Yeah.
this was
And the brewery,
the brewery first,
right, then the tango.
then the tango. But we didn't design the original brewery.
The only one that counts is the one we did.
Yeah, but we were friends with this guy
Yes,
who
right.
had this really timely concept. Not peanuts on the floor. That's a concept.
Hmm.
You shell the peanuts. That's a concept. Salad bar. That's a concept.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peanuts on
But
the
he
floor.
had. I can't explain it all, but it was hamburgers, really big hamburgers
First one's in a basket.
in a basket. Well,
And
that may be
cottage
familiar
fries. Yeah,
to you
cottage
now,
fries.
but it had
Oh,
never been
interesting.
done.
Those
And then,
oblong basket thing?
yeah, a little wicker like
Oh, okay.
this, and
Right,
they were
right, right.
real. They weren't plastic.
No,
yeah.
no, they were
And
I
then,
remember that.
and the French fries were not French fries. He like scalloped them.
cottage
yeah.
fries.
Yeah, well, they were cottage, but
Right.
he never peeled them. They left the skin on,
Oh, yeah.
which was a big deal.
Yeah.
And they'd take a bunch of these and they'd fry them, deep
Right.
fry them like French fries. And it was like novel. And people were going nuts over it.
So we were customers of his, and he decided he was going to close that particular restaurant.
right, but he was,
Also a neighbor.
yeah, what happened is Chicago would have lifestyle neighborhoods pop up,
Mhm.
you know, and the hippies would go into an area and they'd become business people and they'd open stores and jean shops and tattoo places and actually they weren't tattooing at the
No.
time. So
But hippie type things.
yeah,
Yeah,
Well,
free
now,
spirit.
you two together, you're each other's muse, would you say?
Yes.
He's your muse, you're
am
his
I your
muse.
muse? I never thought of that.
I think of you as a muse. You're
Yeah,
my
I'm her muse,
Oh, you're a muse or?
a muse.
Okay.
Muse.
all
I'm
right,
like
you
an
can correct me.
amusement. All right,
But I'm
Yes,
definitely
you're
a
right.
muse.
Mutual musing, I would
Yeah.
say.
that's my
Okay.
key. That's my main job in life, is to amuse her.
So at one point you had some stores that were out of this country. They were in Paris, right?
They're
Yeah,
out
how
of
did
this
that-
world.
Yeah, out of this world and this country. So how did that happen?
Well, that jumps a little bit.
Yeah.
We're in Chicago. We're designing restaurants, winning awards from the industry, and getting one job after another. At one point, we were working on the 3 top restaurateurs, the nouveau restaurateurs. 3 top restaurateurs were all fierce competitors. They loved each other, but they were fierce competitors. The only way they could top the other guy was to hire us. So we would design restaurateur A, and then after that, restaurateur B would come to us, and then restaurateur C would come to us. And one day, I remember we were in the studio, and we had to have a meeting with one of them, and then all of a sudden there was another meeting that had to be called with another one, and it was like shuffling them in and out without them bumping into each other. It was just a lot of fun. So now we had made it in Chicago. Chicago, like I said, was just a wonderful place. It's a great place for artists. It's a great place for entrepreneurs. And we were both. We were artists and entrepreneurs. And so at one point, we decided we should get back to fine art. You know,
Yeah, they were thinking of us mostly as designers
I
at
know what
that
you
time.
mean.
So
Which
we
was
needed
stupid
to
of us
reestablish that we are
Yeah, but in
fine
those days,
artists.
that was, I know.
Yeah, it was stupid of us because everything we were doing was art, and
Right.
and just the pure act of how we did it was art.
Mm-hmm.
So that's okay. So, but we decided that we wanted to do what we'll call pure art, painting, sculpting, da 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 da, or just take the brand on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in Chicago, you have a choice: L.A., San Francisco, New York. That was it. Well, there wasn't much of an art scene in L.A.
No, not at that time.
No.
At that
So
time.
New York really,
There was an
came out
art
on
scene, but
top.
it was very California,
Yeah.
very ingrained. You had to be bored on a surfboard, you know. And then, we became very aware of Soho in New York. Not that it was busy with things going on, but there was this buzz around Soho. So we went and checked it out, and we took a loft on the 4th floor of Prince of Worcester, right in the middle of Soho. And
it was an elevator loft. It was brand new. It was completely open as
elevator
lofts
is
are.
that the
Yeah, to
elevator
your floor.
we had a
directly
whole
to your
floor.
floor,
Each
exactly.
was a floor, and there were about what, 6,
No,
7?
oh, actually there were 6 because we were on the 4th, and then
There were
this-
2 more. All
there
right.
were 2 more, right?
And the
exactly.
people who were taking those, and this is all just happening.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, there's all these artists coming here, and we're all on the same trip.
I
and
bet it
we're-
was exciting.
It was very
thrilling.
exciting.
I mean,
Now,
every major artist
there was
was
the
there
guy-
at the time.
There was the artist that had gotten there earlier, who started the whole thing with the lofts. You know, artists needed larger spaces to do their large paintings, the stuff. So we get down there and up there, and we take a loft and we trick it out. It becomes a sculptural environment. You had hidden areas to sleep in, and it was
Rear projection screens.
yeah, it was just.
You walked over
Had our drawing
moving
boards in
signs.
there. It was just a fun, exciting place. And but all of a sudden, no one was calling us. New Yorkers didn't know who we were yet,
Yeah.
and,
Good stuff.
and didn't care. Really didn't care. Oh, you come from Chicago, so what? You know, and
In Chicago,
Chicago
thought we
has stopped
were too
calling us.
expensive.
We're probably too expensive.
We're in New
Now
York.
we had a war chest, having been successful in Chicago, and we took and but it was like 60 cents, 70 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
You know, it was going fast.
So you had to figure something out.
Yeah, we had to reinvent ourselves. We had to figure out what
We
we're
do
doing.
that though. We love moving
Yeah,
to
we're doing
new
it now.
areas
We're doing
and
it now.
reinventing ourselves.
The constant reinvention,
Mm-hmm.
and so we.
We opened the 3rd store in all of Soho,
The 3rd retail store.
and it became an
There were
absolute
restaurants.
sensation.
People were
Okay.
coming down. The restaurants supported the artists and the bars. And there were famous bars like the Cedar Bar with Red Grooms, the artists.
Yeah, on Spring Street
The-
Natural. I
the-
mean, there were a
the
lot
artists
of places.
were making the bars famous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But but there was nobody there during the day because these were all
So
lofts.
were you open at night then, or? Were you-
Yes.
Well-
we realized, okay, we can be open all day long. People really aren't coming down here. But at night, it was a
Yeah,
thriving
The cabs would come down
hot
and restaurants
community.
would fill up.
Right. So we decided we'd start opening at 10 o'clock. Well, actually, we started at 8 o'clock because everybody was coming at that time, so they buzz into the shop. And then after
Oh, I
dinner, they'd all come back again. So we'd be open from like 8 till midnight.
Oh.
And the store practically had to have guards to prevent too many people in the store.
Why would you leave Soho and go to Venice, California? Why was that? Oh, that was, okay.
The draw of going to a major city that now had become much more familiar with the world of art. Really appealed to us. And
The
again,
weather.
the weather.
Why does everybody come to
Right,
California?
exactly. I mean, the weather in all of California, but
What's it?
mostly in desert cities, because Venice, where we lived, we had this amazing 5,000 square foot residence, 3 stories, on the canals.
Mm-hmm.
And it had been lived in.
No, it was brand
And
new.
it was
home,
built
yeah.
by this really unusual guy, very wealthy.
Who's that? I mean, who's with the architect? Not the owner.
No, the owner.
The
was
owner who was
architect.
the architect, right.
Yeah, he was a
played both
former
roles.
war correspondent with the army, but he was German, and he was a perfectionist, and he owned a lot of property, and he made this because it's almost like a hobby, and it's
And all
unique,
he knew is
totally
the people
unique.
that needed to
But-
live in there had to be special.
Yeah,
So he
And
curated the tenants, right?
he definitely
Yeah.
curated the tenants.
he had tenant. There was only us.
Yeah, and those 3
Yeah,
stories.
but it was like I only will let these people that I'll go to dinner with
Mm-hmm.
live
Own
here.
this house.
I love that.
Right, exactly.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So
we
anyway,
used to, I just want to say, in that 5,000 square foot space, along with doing all of the art, which was mostly interior because we really didn't have any grounds, very, very limited, and of course because of the canals as well, we used to throw parties for 300 people at a time.
we put on
We
an
were
art
our
show.
own gallery.
Listen,
we were our own
We would
gallery.
have, like, we weren't doing business with galleries. We rarely did business with galleries.
Individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, individuals, and we would.
This is how you
feed.
would get your clients. Is that?
Yeah,
Exactly.
but we weren't doing large scale sculpture at that time.
we were doing
That came when we moved out here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
We didn't have the
ceramics.
outdoors there.
Right,
Right.
right.
But we had this
Ceramics,
big space.
paintings. That was really what we were about at that time because
There was a
our
period-
limitation was within building structure and wall space.
There was a period when we were creating ceramic art.
Mm-hmm.
In Chicago, I had been asked to teach at an offshoot of Columbia College to teach ceramic sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some background, but I never did any throwing or bowls or anything like that. But Karen, we did a series of plates that Karen just took to like there was no tomorrow. They were very pop oriented, you know.
And I was the artist for the year 2000 for the LA City LA Art
L.A.
Museum, right? Museum of Art. Yeah,
LACMA.
here the names switched without
LACMA.
museum. Yeah, LACMA. And
She
so,
was
so many
the
pieces of art.
selected artist, and
Ceramics.
she created these things, and they would raise money using those plates. Now we
These
did
are
them
the ceramics.
We
You're
did them
talking about the
together.
ceramics, right?
Yeah, ceramics, exactly.
We did them together, but in those days we kind of said, well, this because
Try
we had
different
like
things.
what 11-foot walls or we're bigger,
Oh, I love you. 18.
18-foot walls in our Venice house. But in those days,
Wow.
this was my wall and this was Karen's wall.
Because everybody said, oh, they can't both be doing this.
Yeah,
And I would do paintings, and she would experiment and do video arts
Yeah, a lot
that
of different
became
media. Yeah.
paintings, digital things. She was doing digital things before there was.
That is amazing.
I was
There
doing
was no
digital,
digital.
very, very early on in a media
So
to be exploited.
when we did the plates, but we did everything together, but it was either positioned as Karen or positioned.
People want to know that, right? People.
Yeah,
in their
and
mind.
we were
Yeah,
naive
exactly.
at the time. No, I mean it really. We said, well, wait a minute. If we're doing everything together, why don't we just sign it together?
The light went off.
The light went off.
And what about when you came to the desert? Did the light go off there?
Yeah, yeah. To go off, did you say?
No, I mean,
No,
the light go
meaning,
on.
right.
The light go on.
Right.
A lot of lights. The lights are always going on. It's
Yeah.
discovery is a day-to-day
Yeah.
job. And we,
And one of the things that took place while we were in Venice, we helped promote a woman who lived in Venice, lived out here in Palm Springs, asked us to bring some of our ceramics to a big philanthropy event she was doing here
At a
in
country club.
Tamarisk,
yeah,
the Tamarisk Country Club. And we said, okay, sure. Well, for us, it was incredibly successful. I mean, we sold everything that we bought. And
Brought.
in fact, brought.
okay.
You're right, you're right. Forget the R. Everything that we brought, and she said, well, why aren't you moving out here? Why aren't
Right.
you moving out here? This is really a very conducive
You could see
to
that
the
your
arts
reception out here.
and philanthropy
And we were
area,
getting a
and you'll
little-
grow from
Yeah,
it.
you were
Getting a
getting
little
ready to-
tired of LA.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
tired of,
Jockeying
So-
in the car and
and,
worrying.
yeah, some of the cows I remember one encountered, a guy thought I cut him off, and I didn't, but he thought I cut him out. He comes pulling up to me, he's waving a gun at me, you know?
Time to go.
Yeah, and, but that basically was it. It was time to reinvent.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were doing more sculpture already, and because we could put it in our studio was so big there.
Yeah,
Right.
we did some that was interior,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
But it was time, and we had came out here on a weekend, and it was
The
like
first time, yes, other than the event for the Tamarisk thing, which took
Right.
place a little later. It was a birthday we celebrated at the Ritz-Carlton, and for the first time in my life, I said, Tony, we're gonna live here one day. Look at these mountains.
Yeah.
Look at the sun, the light, the palm trees.
it's like that song. Is it Beth Hart? Where she's I love you like the sun
Jen
loves California.
Yes.
I love Beth
Yeah.
Hart.
I do too.
Uh-oh.
Favorite.
Back at you.
All right, so you saw the space, the colors, the stars, the flowers, and you thought, yeah,
Yes.
And the temperature. We never disliked the heat. She loves.
We thrive.
She's only 82 pounds. She has no fat on her. She's
I
comfortable
require
in
heat.
the sun.
Right, exactly. And then when we were out here, we recognized how many people were how worldly they were, how well traveled, how well
Different
educated.
mm-hmm,
The fact that they had all run very successful businesses, and really taught me how to want to give back,
yeah,
how to want to do something for the community. So we just started with several charities that we do
Yeah,
there.
we were really not
awards
involved in
every year.
charities other than the.
Oh, other than the Johnson Cancer Center in
Yeah.
LA, that was totally
well, this gives you
the first time.
access. This gives you direct access.
Yeah.
It really does, and it's respected
Mhm.
and appreciated.
And you feel good.
You do.
You really feel
do.
good.
And I feel so many more artists should try and take on and understand what it means to give.
Mhm.
Because when you give, you get. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
rewarding.
automatic.
Right, exactly.
So we started participating
Mhm.
a lot, and we started donating.
Yes.
And we weren't wealthy. I mean, I can't afford my own paintings. I mean, it's interesting. And
But there were a few instances where we really, our hearts just opened up.
yeah,
One of being Desert Arc. So the gentleman who runs it, Richard Balaco, wasn't
usually
getting.
referred to as the director.
Yes, the director.
I know
Yeah,
him.
think of,
He's
okay.
moved away now.
Oh, has he? I didn't even know that. Well, we had such a respect for him, and the fact that
Well,
no one knew who his
Right.
where his building was.
Yeah,
I mean, there
It
was
was
no
set back.
identifiable
And,
thing
and,
about
that's
it.
true.
and you can't, and the signage requirements or laws
Yeah, wouldn't allow
are
for anything,
restricted,
yeah.
are restricted because they think that they're going to litter the landscape. But if you use art to
Oh,
draw
I
attention,
see.
So we
So-
decided that if we took our art and donated it to these really special loving team of people working under Richard Velacco and our friend at the time.
All you have to do
there,
is
Miss
take a tour of
Blumberg.
the facility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and your heart goes out to it and you want to do something. So we donated 5 works of art.
5 figures that we collected as a, what do you call it, not
Ensemble.
an ensemble
Of what?
piece.
Is
Of
it?
modern man, we called
Oh,
it.
okay.
The figures, modern
And
man.
One was
Not as
holding-
in male, but as in humanity.
Yeah, right. And one was holding a heart above its head. And it's called Joined at the Heart. And that's exactly what it felt like. And they have used it, and it has meant so much to them and their clients over all these
Yes, it
years
does.
that it's really special. You can go in there and they've painted so many of the rooms and everything
And the colors.
in the
that
colors
we,
of the sculpture.
Yeah, it had a big effect on them, but an even bigger effect on us.
Why don't you
because-
mention what the Desert Arc is then, a little bit on Desert Arc?
Where is it located?
No,
No, what is it?
what it is.
Oh, it's an organization that is in service to
Mentally
adults,
adult challenged.
mentally
challenged
challenged adults. I think 18 and over.
Yes.
And they
exactly.
employ some people?
Oh, yes. I mean, they take them out in jobs, stay with them all day. You
They
can go
train
to our
them.
local
Train 'em.
Dawson's and they train them there.
They train them. If you go
And
to some
they're
of the
so proud.
right,
They're so proud when they can do something.
right, I remember that there was a video I watched of this fella who was
Wanted to be trained and learn pizza making.
well, that was his
That's
next.
right.
He was a dishwasher, and you think he was the top chef in the world. He was so proud that he had a job and doing the job, and they train him. They pay their salary.
That's right.
They pay their salary. They train them, and then they supervise them. And so I remember this one fella, Matthew, who I know from there, was working at Gelson's, and I look around, and sure enough, over there is a staff member from Desert Art.
Training him,
Right,
staying
took
with
him
him, so he
there,
was
stayed
working
with
there.
him.
All right, so then I also want to bring up the fact that after the effects that it took place on all of us in 2002, in 2008, we did an Our Hero Dog, which was to
Oh,
honor
How
firefighters
did you
Yeah.
remember
and first responders. And the first place to have one was in front of the Palm Desert Historical Society,
Mhm.
which was the original fire station.
That's right.
And we were so proud of doing that.
We came
And-
up with this program of
For the public art and,
yeah,
and
here's
Palm
what
Desert?
happened. 9/11 happened,
Mhm.
okay? And so we needed to express some kind of feeling or support of those thousands that got murdered in that. And then the responders running into this building, and I mean, it's just unbelievable. So we decided to create a sculpture that would honor firefighters and first responders. And and we did so, and it was a giant Dalmatian
6
puppy,
foot 2 inch.
a fun puppy. It wasn't, detailed to be real. It was like a toy. It was like a kid's Dalmatian.
But
And
when
that-
you saw it, you really
You knew it was
felt
a
better.
Dalmatian.
Yeah.
You knew it was a Dalmatian.
Well, and it
you
wasn't
knew
a-
what Dalmatians have always
Right.
What
represented.
color was it?
The first one,
What's
the one purple.
Purple. So we did a purple Dalmatian. So illogical colors that entertain.
Mhm.
And
And then years after that, and in
it grew. It grew.
oh yeah, there's 33
Well,
across
the
the country.
concept was this: we're going to make this sculpture. People would want to buy the sculpture, and we said, "You're welcome to buy the sculpture, if you donate it to a cause
This is
honoring
Yeah,
firefighters.
to a
Well,
public
this
building.
valley has more philanthropy than any place I've ever been. And there are people who will step up and pay for it. And we got, early on, and we just came up with the concept, and we were concerned that it was just too much money for one person. So we divided it up into 3 shares.
We had 3 sponsors that
Three
sponsored
sponsors.
the first one. And of course, it was a wonderful experience for them because they were acknowledged for it.
Right.
And because all of our hearts just grew from having done so.
Right,
Well-
and they got credits for doing that. They've got recognition, and of course, if most of the places they go are nonprofits, so we kind of let people know that this is something you could do, feel good about, and it's a tax deduction, you know.
What was the name? Was that group called something? The Dogs, or was it called?
Oh,
something?
Our
it's called
Hero.
Our
They're all
Hero.
called
Our
Our
Hero, okay.
Hero.
Our period.
Hero.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually, we used that because it was, of course, a clever name, and it also allowed wherever it went for them to take the R and personalize it with a name for themselves. Now,
Yeah, and it's on the collar, says Our
Our
Hero.
Hero.
And now there are 33 Our Heroes
Is
around
that
the
right?
world.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Around the world. There's what it is, really. There's one
in Salvador.
but they're only in front.
Of fire stations, children's museums,
Children's
libraries,
Hospital,
children's hospitals,
like that.
very meaningful places, including Newtown. Now, move around and go forward. And just recently, I had the privilege of running into an oncologist while I was changing planes.
You were in Las
Las
Vegas.
Vegas, changing planes, coming back to Palm Springs.
Where were you coming from?
I was coming from Marfa, Texas, which I'm happy to say we have a big exhibition in. And it's an amazing, somewhere that's in the middle of nowhere, but very well recognized by the
What
community.
happens, yeah, art in Marfa resonates in New York.
Absolutely.
It's that
So the
kind of thing.
oncologist that came up to me thanked me for
She recognized Karen at the airport.
she
What was she
yeah,
thinking?
yes. And came up to me and thanked me profusely for having donated an 8-foot rabbit called Hope. That's in front of the Cancer Center,
Desert Regional Hospital's Comprehensive
Cancer Center. And that she had recently lost a very meaningful relationship with a patient who passed on, and it was really hard for her. And she was just having a terrible day, obviously. And she went out and she stood in front of that rabbit, and which is painted in purple and pink dots. Purple for hope and survivorship, and pink dots for breast cancer survivorship. And she stood there for a period of time, and it just brought her back to life. It gave her smiles, it gave her hope, which is what it was meant to do.
And the hospital itself uses it to celebrate
Every year.
people who are
Cancer free.
Yes,
exactly.
yeah.
They ring a
do
bell
ring
and they
the
stand
bell.
in front of the our rabbit. I mean,
Yeah, it's very special for us.
yeah.
What's the significance of the rabbit, by the way?
Many eons ago.
I don't know. We
Yeah.
just
When we first met.
Yeah, I know the
Yeah.
story. I mean, I know how subconsciously
It became
it became
our mantra
important to us.
within us, yes.
But for some reason, and this is the reason, we just wanted to do rabbits. It's just, let's do rabbits and do them in different colors, and they're not gender. Well, they're gender, but we don't know what they
Nobody
are,
knows, right?
right? And we don't care. We don't ask the rabbit, you know. And
They're all vegetarian, which I have a great deal of respect for
Their
it.
silhouette is absolutely recognizable.
And they're so innocent, they couldn't hurt anything.
Karen and I were on an early date in Chicago, right? Early?
Yeah, very.
Was it
Oh,
our
a couple weeks. It was no. We had dates before that. That was the first time we ever went to the northwestern part.
Oh, okay.
In
So we were
downtown on Michigan Avenue.
we were at a famous Chicago's known for pizza. And it's a
Well, that
famous
was your
pizza
first meeting.
place called Due's. Not Due's. It
Who
was
knows?
Uno's. Due's is the famous place, but also Gino's, right?
Yeah, Jouet's later.
So we went to Gino's. It's very dark. Remember, we're married to other people. We're in a corner. It's kind of like the Cole Porter song. where-
Minnesota's Regrets? Not that
No,
one.
no.
I knew you'd say that.
Guess who I saw today, my
yeah.
darling.
Yeah.
And so we, after being in this like basement, we took a stroll, and we're up near Michigan Avenue, and Northwestern University is along the lake there, and there is a park that is between two of the campus buildings that goes from Ohio Street to, I don't know, Ontario, one of them. Anyway, we went strolling down this, well, it was pretty abandoned because it was nighttime, the school was not active, and we just walked and was that the first time I kissed you?
That was the first time you kissed me, but it wasn't the first date. That's okay.
It took me that long. Huh?
Yeah, it did. It did. It took
Are
you
we gonna
several
move,
weeks.
are we gonna get onto your private life now?
Not exactly. However, in that particular moment in that park where we were together and no one was there, and it was, I mean, Michigan Avenue, these buildings are,
Enormous.
you know, enormous buildings. All of a sudden, after he kissed me, we both looked out and up and down, and there was this little tiny rabbit.
Came out of the
Someplace
bushes.
it couldn't possibly
Down-
be and
I mean,
live.
Downtown Chicago.
How did it survive? It was like meant to be.
It's like the only grass in the whole
yeah, it was in
downtown.
that little area. You're absolutely right. And there it was. So I think that subliminally stayed with us
Yeah.
for years.
You talk
without
about endorphins.
coming into our minds. Yeah,
Yeah.
that set it off for sure.
There's some rabbits. There's a corner on 111 and what is that? What is
El
that?
Paseo, a town center.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk
In
about some
our
where you
town
place some
center,
of your.
What we ended up doing was an ensemble of 9 rabbits, and had the good fortune to be able to, with the city's
But
assistance.
wait, I think it's interesting because this is Palm Desert.
Yes.
Okay, but it's interesting how that came about. I spaced out on the mayor. She was just fantastic.
Jan?
No,
No,
Susan.
pre-Jan.
Susan, three
Oh,
names.
Susan Weber. Suzanne
Yes,
Weber.
yes, thank you, Susan Weber.
Who
Came
was
to
a
us-
sweetheart. She's just
Yeah, we love
wonderful,
Jan
and
as
she's
well.
passionate about Palm Desert. So she came up to us. We had currently had 9 rabbits,
Different rabbits.
different rabbits, in Rancho Mirage near the where the chart house once was,
By the atrium.
by the atrium, and that was our first one. And we were very clever. It's one thing to make art; it's another thing to get it made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are large, expensive materials, solid aluminum and materials. And so you have 9 of them. So we came up with an idea that we would sell them. Or no, in order to sell them,
You had
we wouldn't do a
them
direct
sponsored.
sale.
You
Yeah.
know, sponsored.
Yeah, we
It's
get,
different.
because of the philanthropic attitude of this area, we went out and made it possible to sponsor a rabbit.
Good.
And you got to put you got to name the rabbit, you got the plaque and everything else, But the best part is when the exhibition was over in 1 year, you got the rabbit.
Yeah,
We
I love
delivered it to
delivered
wherever you
rabbits,
wanted.
Right,
So you have Dr. Wendy. Dr. Wendy
Dr. Wendy.
has one in front of her house at Palm Springs. Visitor Center has one. This
Private
company
Homes,
that,
a company in Sun Valley,
yeah,
in California. I mean, it kind of
yeah,
goes
the
on.
company that we buy our materials from, aluminum, and
Decided he should have
they
one.
they have one currently in front of their
Headquarters?
yeah, in the where is it? It's in
No, it isn't. It's in Sun Valley.
that's Sun Valley.
Well, there's different Sun Valleys.
Oh.
It's Sun Valley.
Okay, so I'm
Los
tripping on
Angeles.
your story.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's okay.
All right. So anyway, they're now all over.
But
But
Susan,
so Susan comes up to us. We're at some kind of benefit, and she says, "How come you put those rabbits in Rancho Mirage?" She says to me. I says, "Well, we had the property.
Right.
We have plenty of property."
Wow.
Within a week and a half, within a week, we were contacted by
Amy Lawrence.
Amy Lawrence, the sweetheart of art, and she's a blessing, and she had 7 locations that were potential sites for the rabbits.
Gee.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And so next thing we're looking at these sites, and this site where it's at was one of them. It didn't take us much time
we
to
knew.
figure out it
we
was a
knew,
great
right,
site. It's
right.
only maybe the busiest traffic.
Did you have
intersection.
Did you have the pieces at that time, or you
No,
had
no,
them-
we had
No,
we had
some,
3
a
of them.
couple, because we kept the what we call the matriarch and the patriarch,
Right.
and one of the smaller ones. So we knew we can just expand from there, and then we did
And we got into high
well,
gear.
some
Oh,
more
yeah.
rabbits.
And you got to
right?
remember what in order to fabricate the rabbit, we do drawings that are mechanical drawings that we turn to CAD drawings that we then use to cut the materials. Well, those were all done. Okay.
I see.
Not all of them, but some of them. So we were able to get into
Oh, I
high
see.
gear and make some rabbits.
So how many are there all together there then?
9.
Actually 9. One of them is a double, so that makes 9. And we have the most positive feedback I
Unbelievable.
could have ever imagined would take place, because so many people drive by those
Yes, they
rabbits
do.
going to and from work, going shopping, wherever they may be going. And they're all kind enough, so many of them, to put it up on social media, take photos with them, express how meaningful it was to view them and see them, and how it really brightens their day.
Yeah.
I don't think I go through a week without someone coming, reaching us, meeting,
Thanking
met for the
us.
first time and thanking us for those rabbits being there.
Yeah, I go to work, I go to work every morning, every weekday morning, and I pass the rabbits.
And
It
this
makes
is
my
now-
day. It prepares me
Yeah.
for work. I
And
mean,
this is their 4th year there now.
I was wondering.
we
Yeah.
just renewed it. We basically, it's not just what we want. We've got to make a lot of people happy. We got to get permission from the mall.
Right.
Then we have to get permission from the bank
Because it's
because
Right.
their
it's a
property.
tenant, and the mall is the landowner. Should we mention
Schnitzer, who's it's
Who's
just
a
really an
big-
amazing philanthropist.
Art Philanthropy?
Yes, they
But I
are.
want to get back to the fact also that if the City of Palm Desert wasn't respectful and loved art and loved doing things for artists
Right.
and loved doing things for their community
Right.
and invested
Through art.
through art and invested in putting in all the bases and helped us
They helped us with
through-
the concrete bases.
right.
They were
right.
just great.
They were terrific to us.
If someone was thinking of moving here, what would you advise them?
Do it in a heartbeat. I mean, it's the best place I can imagine. as artists, we can live anywhere, seriously, in the world, because we just pack up our little
work goes with us.
supplies.
All we need is a pad of paper and a pencil and a computer now.
In a computer
And we
now,
can
right?
do it, so we can live anywhere we want. And this is where we choose, the valley is where we choose to live.
What's your best life advice?
Best what?
Life advice.
Find a girl like Karen.
And find a man like Tony that will keep you laughing day in and day out and never disappoints you. He just doesn't. He's just always there, and he's always making me smile. And what's life about? It's smiling, laughing, and enjoying things, and that's what we do together. And creating.
Yeah.
We're fortunate.
And
we
make
create.
your work beneficial to others.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
your work, because when you do that, you're being really selfish, because you're really supporting yourself.
Again, what goes around comes around.
Oh,
So for us,
I don't like
it's
that.
a blessing.
I don't like
What?
that.
That's
I
so
don't like goes around,
true.
comes around.
It's true. If you give, you get.